Christians, it's the difference between create and form. You don't create pottery, you simply form it. The clay already exists. Pottery is clay reshaped. The same with furniture. Strip away the varnish and your dining table is simply firewood. Now look at Genesis 2:7. God didn't say he created man, Adam in Hebrew. He said he formed man. The very scripture says man, existing already, became a living soul. Living means spirit and the being means soul. So even without the spirit and mind, early man, the Genesis 1:27 man that was created, our evolutionary ancestors were still being referred to as man in the Bible. This story is very important to help us compartmentalize the differences between the body, the mind, the spirit, and the emotions. Genesis 2:5 confirms, without syntax, without interpreting what we think Moses was trying to say, a man not to cultivate the ground. It does not say there was no man. Man was there, but he was not yet able to cultivate the ground. He did not have the mental capacity, the ability to consider the past, the future, and make decisions in the present. Our early ancestors were different to us. The substance of this video is to highlight the distinction between the start of human biology, the so-called out of Africa story, and the start of our unique human mindset, characterized by the beginnings of cultivation in the Neolithic era of the Levant, which is today's Egypt, Israel, Mesopotamia, around Iraq. This would help us understand better why our body and feelings are wholly separate and different to our mindset and our spirituality. Human evolution, when considering how many species there are, isn't that much of a big deal, but it's the human mind and spirit, that transformation of what it means to be a human. The fact that the Genesis story confirms two separate beginnings, one for our creation and one for the formation, is simply par for the course. We can trace our biology and emotions to Africa, but we trace our mind and spirit to the Levant. And what I find fascinating is that cultivation didn't start until the Neolithic era, 10,000 years ago, right there in the Levant, around Israel to be more specific. That's where the first seeds of cultivation were recently discovered. Cheddar Man, from 9,000 years ago, is considered the oldest human with a confirmed direct lineage to a living person, Adrian Target, both sharing eternal DNA, mitochondrial DNA. This extraordinary find establishes a connection spanning over 9,000 years and 300 generations. The scripture says God formed man from man. Cells were taken from the man to create the current humans we see. This is biblical, and the evidence also points to this as well. Bone marrow mesenchymal stem cells have been used as a donor cell type for the production of cloned animals. You see, the first man of Genesis 1:7, which the Bible often refers to as the old man, is still within us. Adam was formed from the stem cells of this man. How do we know? Because the scripture says God formed man from the Afar Min Hadama. For a long time, people have suggested that Hadama is referring to the earth. The first man, the old man, is often referred to as the earth as well. For example, in Ecclesiastes, it explains that man and animals come from the earth, the spirit of the earth, and that returns to the earth when the person dies. The emotions return to the earth, the spirit returns to God, and the soul, which is you, waits for the judgment. Why did God choose the rib bone in the formation of Eve? Adam said, "This is bone of my bone, and this is flesh of my flesh." First he says, "This is flesh of my flesh." And that means the same spirit of the flesh, the same emotions which he was formed from the original man. We know ladies have emotions, have instincts, and have desires. So in there, we see that that is a clone emotion. And then he also says, "This is bone of my bones." Adult bone marrow is a rich source of mesenchymal stem cells. Adam was speaking about bones. More specifically, bone marrow mesenchymal stem cells, which are used as donor cells for the production of cloned animals. Eve was a direct clone of Adam. Now, some of you would ask me, how can you clone a woman from a man? We have cloned female mice from the cells of male mice, but we know through science that the rib bone regenerates over time. So Adam would have recovered his rib bone in due course. So when we look at Genesis 2:5, it helps us navigate the difference between our evolutionary ancestors who live purely by instinct and Neolithic man, who for the first time carried the conscious soul and spirit, which Genesis 2:7 speaks about. And that brings us back to Genesis 1:27. He created man, male and female, not Adam, not Eve. Genesis 1 is the creation of man, but the formation of man is Genesis 2. Scripture says a body without its spirit is dead, whether it's man's body or whether it's an animal's body. The spirit of the flesh, the instincts, the desires, and the emotions is active in biology. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 20 to 21 explains, both man and animals share this spirit of the flesh, comes from the earth and returns to it. So your emotion is not the same thing as your mind. In fact, the three beings that make you, God refers to them independently of your body. Your body is referred to as your members, your jacket. So Genesis isn't referring to a form of dirt. It is not saying man was formed from dirt. In fact, this is an English translation. It simply says, God made man from the Afar Min Hadama, from the particles of the earth. We know through biology that the smallest living particle of life is a cell. God took a cell from our early ancestors, the spirit of the flesh. That is what God is referring to. The cells, the living particles. Your cells carry your emotions, carry your instincts. Jesus himself said, that which is born of flesh is flesh, not that which is born of dirt, not that which is born of body. He wasn't speaking about the body, but your flesh. And there are lots of scriptures all throughout the Bible that separate the difference between your flesh and your body. They are not the same thing. When Paul said, the flesh desires are contrary to the spirit desires, again, he's not speaking about the body or dirt. He is speaking about your emotions, your instincts. Many Eastern cultures and religions worship this spirit. It's nature's spirit, referred to as the universe, Mother Nature. In fact, Paul called it the creation that waits for spiritual sons to manifest. It is very different to the Spirit of God, man's spirit, or even your mind. John in Revelation 6 says, she, the earth, helped the woman with child. Adam killed off a human spirit through disobedience. Genesis 2:17 and 1 Corinthians 15:22 both confirm the man's spirit died through Adam's disobedience. Notice he was still called man in Genesis 1:27 when he had just emotions. So even without a spirit, humans are still called man. We are 2/3 the direction by which God created us and formed us initially. This is why Jesus came, so man can be spiritually born a second time. Born again for short in John 3 verses 3. You are a son of man. You are a child of man when you have a soul. And that is the unique parts of you that makes you separate to animals and to angels. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to have a part 2 of this series, so do subscribe and like. See you in the next video.